Let's talk about one of the most critical arteries for the entire global economy, the Strait of Hormuz. Right now, that artery is under an incredible amount of pressure. A dramatic military action has just kicked off that could, believe it or not, affect every single one of us.
And wow, the stakes could not be clearer. This quote, directly from the U.S. president, sets an incredibly confrontational tone. It just goes to show how tense and, frankly, how potentially explosive this whole situation has become.
So, what is actually happening right now? Well, a U.S. military blockade of all ships moving in and out of Iranian ports is officially underway. This isn't just a threat anymore, it's a reality on the water.
And this is really the core of the conflict. On one side, the U.S. says its goal is strategic, to cut off Iran's economic lifeline, its oil exports. But on the other side, the Iranian military is calling this an illegal act of piracy. And they've made a pretty serious threat. If their ports are blockaded, no port in the entire Gulf will be safe.
So you might be wondering, how does something like this actually play out on the water? Well, according to maritime experts, the tactics being used here and the possible responses are creating a uniquely dangerous situation.
So how does this blockade work in practice? Well, analysts say the U.S. Navy's plan is to turn back any ships leaving Iranian ports. But, and this is key, they're trying to do it from a distance, staying just outside the range of Iran's missile and drone capabilities. They've also made it clear that humanitarian aid will be allowed to pass and that ships coming from other non-Iranian ports won't be targeted.
But here's where it gets really complicated. A fascinating insight comes from maritime historian Salvatore Mergeliano. He says, look, this is not going to be a one-sided thing. Iran isn't just going to sit back and take it. The real risk is that they could respond by enforcing their own blockade, which would create this nightmare scenario of two competing navies trying to control the exact same narrow waterway.
And that right there is the ultimate fear. If you have two competing blockades, the entire Strait of Hormuz could just seize up. We're not just talking about oil from Iran anymore. We're talking about all shipping, everything, coming to a complete and total standstill.
It's a pretty chilling thought, isn't it? So what happens when a global artery as vital as this one just freezes over? Well, the consequences, they ripple outwards almost immediately.
You see, this is not just some distant regional conflict. This blockade is already sending massive shockwaves through the global economy. And the effects are being felt everywhere, from what you pay for gas to the prices at your local grocery store.
The first and most immediate hit is to the supply chain. The UN is reporting that around 20,000 ships are already caught in the middle of this, literally stranded in the region. That is a staggering number of vessels, not to mention the crews and cargo, all facing huge uncertainty and hardship every single day.
And on top of all those stranded ships, there's the physical damage. We're talking about more than 80 oil and gas facilities, things like production platforms, terminals, and refineries that have been damaged in the conflict. This just makes it even harder to get energy out to the global market, even if the ships could get through.
And all of this leads to a pretty stark assessment from the head of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol. He is not mincing words here. He's calling this the worst global energy disruption ever. I mean, that's an incredibly powerful statement coming from the world's top energy watchdog.
But this crisis goes way beyond just fuel. The UN points out that this kind of disruption hits crucial goods like fertilizer. And it creates a chain reaction. When fertilizer shipments are blocked, farmers around the world can't get what they need. That means crop yields suffer, food prices go up, and it directly makes food insecurity worse for millions of the world's most vulnerable people. Now, this whole crisis isn't just being fought with ships and sanctions. It's also creating a major political fracture, a really deep diplomatic divide between countries that are normally close allies. So on one hand, you have the U.S. pushing ahead with a military blockade as its main strategy. But on the other hand, its key European allies, we're talking the UK and France, are taking a completely different approach. They are all in on diplomacy, co-hosting talks to try and find a peaceful way out of this mess.
And this is not just a difference in opinion, it's a difference in action. The UK Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has been absolutely clear, stating publicly that the UK will not be a part of the US blockade. That leaves the US largely on its own with this military strategy.
And that push for diplomacy is getting a big echo from the United Nations. Their spokesperson put it very plainly, saying that after weeks of destruction, it's obvious there is no military solution here. They're urging everyone to stay at the negotiating table until an agreement is reached. So you've got all these military, economic, and diplomatic pressures clashing with each other. The big question is there a way out? Are there any off-ramps that could de-escalate this crisis before it spirals completely out of control?
Right now, there are basically two major buffers trying to contain the damage. The first one is diplomatic, those talks being led by the UK and France. And the second one is economic. The International Energy Agency has said it's ready to open up the world's emergency oil reserves from its stockpiles to ease the energy shock if things get worse.
But even with these potential off-ramps, a huge risk is still hanging in the air. Experts are warning that by moving into the narrow waters of the Strait, U.S. Navy ships become much more vulnerable. They are basically easier targets for Iran's missile and drone fleets. It's a really high-stakes gamble that could blow up any peaceful resolution in an instant.
Which really just leaves us with this final thought. As we've just seen, one action in one narrow strip of water can disrupt global energy markets, it can split up longtime allies, and it can even threaten the food on someone's table halfway across the planet. It really makes you wonder, in our deeply connected world, can any blockade ever truly be local?